Here we are again. It is Sunday, October 12th of 2025. I'm Jay Essen, and I am continuing my playthrough of Ryan Veeder's Castle Balderstone series. We last finished Tales from Castle Balderstone, so this time around we're going to the second game in sequence, Additional Tales from Castle Balderstone. This time around, we are starting in the lounge. Good evening. My name is Ryan Veeder. It is my great pleasure in this festive and frightening season to welcome you once again to Castle Balderstone, America's legendary hotbed of horror, a treasure trove of the morose, macabre, and monstrous. Its crooked pinnacles continue to slash blasphemously against ever-present clouds. Its grim silhouette is still a stain of absolute blackness in the midst of a black sky. This year, as they did last year, as they do every year, the greatest spookcrafters working in the English language have assembled in Castle Balderstone's drafty halls to test their latest material on the only audience possessed of hearts so inured to terror as to withstand the absolute scariest stories, each other. Tonight, once again, you are my +1 to this wedding of the weird and the wicked. As we ascend again the winding stairs of Castle Balderstone, the wind outside howls in warning, and the temperature drops until your teeth chatter in the cold. Or is it in recollection of the horrors you witnessed here 1 year ago? We trudge again through antique galleries, across musty hallways, and down forgotten corridors. The occasional window offers no view of a friendly outside world, but of walls, towers, and perilously pitched roofs, confirming what your aching legs and ragged breath have already predicted, that the labyrinthine architecture of Castle Balderstone is one you can never hope to escape. Nevertheless, we continue on, through another creaking door, and into a warm sitting room, where velvet couches sit in a circle near a roaring fire. The walls are lined with bookshelves, stacked with titles you recognize as those you have never been brave enough to read. You recognize the occupants of the couches as well. Murder mongers, evil experts, ghost gurus, monster maestros, vampire virtuosos, and dread distributors. These are the infamous authors of Castle Balderstone, and you are their latest victim again. I really thought that we'd get here on time this year, but just like last time, everyone else is already here, and they're all waiting for us, so we take our seats in a conspicuous display of embarrassed hurriedness and loudly whispered apologies. When the chamber is quiet at last, the first author rises to share with us the first tale of the evening. It's Johanna C. Quinn, an elder stateswoman of the dread distribution community. Oh, this woman messes with my head. It is common knowledge that Johanna's earliest work was in the field of technical writing. She wrote operation manuals for microwave ovens, but she lost her job when customers started complaining that the instructions were too scary. That's when she realized her destiny and turned her hand to writing horror. Dense, cerebral horror. Stuff that terrifies you on a philosophical level. A younger author assists Johanna in climbing the dais. She leans heavily on the lectern and pauses a moment before she speaks. The story I've brought tonight is a true one. It happened to one of my grandchildren. I've changed the superficial details for privacy's sake, and I've changed a few other things for the sake of structure. To align certain symmetries, to tighten up pacing, to eliminate needless repetition, for often the most important thing is to get to the point. Speaking of which, she says, and she begins to read. Ryan Veeder presents Where We Can Hear the Whispering Dark. A story by Johanna C. Quinn. Release 1, serial number 191031, Inform 7, build 6M62, Inform 6 version 6.33 library 6/12 in SD. You lie on the couch and look up at the stars. A little while later, you fall asleep. Some unmeasured time later, you awaken. The stars haven't moved. All is quiet. Lounge. You stand up, stretch, shake your arms and legs a little. The professor disapproves of your sleeping on the couch, so you have to enjoy the opportunity whenever you can get away with it. This was designed to be a cozy hangout spot with as many amenities as could be crammed into the limited space. A TV, a microwave, a decent couch. You still spend most of your time here, but you stopped actively enjoying it a while ago. Even the skylight has become so much wallpaper for you. The view never changes. Passages through the rock lead east, west, and south. Examine me. You're not in great shape, but you haven't had much of a reason to take great care of yourself lately. We should go ahead and do About. You're playing additional Tales from Castle Balderstone, an entry in the 2019 Ectocomp, and a sequel of sorts to Tales from Castle Balderstone, an entry in the 2018 Ectocomp. I am your host, Ryan Veeder. I am also the editor of this anthology, and also I am the real author of all the stories, but don't tell anybody. Harrison Gerard beta tested one of the games. The other games didn't get beta tested at all. How terrifying! To learn more about me, Ryan Veeder, find me on Twitter at rcveeder or the World Wide Web, rcveeder.net. Examine the couch. There's a distinctly U-shaped depression in the eidetic foam. Hopefully that'll flatten itself out before the professor notices. Let's examine the microwave. The microwave is a mess. You really need to clean it up before the professor has a chance to yell at you about it. Clean microwave. Well, maybe not right this minute. Examine the TV. On this screen is the dim image of a sad battery. You must have left it on while you were sleeping. Now it'll need a few days to recharge. Darn. Turn TV off. It stands to reason that turning the thing off completely would help it charge a little faster, but you haven't figured out how to do that. I'm trying to decide if that makes sense. Let's say it does. Let's go, we have exits to the east, the west, and the south. Let's go south to the study. This is where all the work gets done. This is where Professor... Okay, I'm going to pronounce this as Thej, but I don't know that there is a definitive pronunciation. This is where Professor Thej analyzes data, tests theories, and mutters bitterly in Saddlebarry about you-know-not-what. You had hoped that being a research assistant would involve a lot of sitting in with the professor, bouncing ideas off each other. As it turns out, your assistantship mostly consists of performing chores and staying out of Thej's way. The professor's amphisbaena is situated in front of the chalkboard, taking up most of the space in this little cave. Tunnels lead north, east, south, and west. Let's check that out. Amphisbaena... This sprawling piece of furniture is ostensibly the Saddlebarry equivalent of an easy chair, but the way the professor sits or reclines in it has never looked particularly comfortable. But didn't Johanna say that this happened to her grandchildren? That is a fascinating introduction for what is a science fiction's tale. Let's go ahead and examine the chalkboard. You can understand maybe a third of the material currently on the chalkboard. It's not that you have any trouble reading the professor's writing, which is almost too precise, but certain equations and assumptions are still a mystery to you. You're enough of an astronomer to understand the basic principles of Thej's work. For as long as you've been at the observatory, though, you don't feel like you've learned anything new. Let's go south to the hibernation pod. Professor Thej floats in its tank of viscous sedatives, dreaming its incomprehensible dreams. The rest of the asteroid is north. We examine the good professor. The Saddlebarry life cycle involves the ebb and flow of certain hormones that, at peak concentration, induce pronounced antisocial tendencies. How they deal with this on the homeworld is beyond you. Professor Thej's solution was to outfit the observatory with a hibernation pod, where it can sleep through the unfriendly phase and effectively experience no interruption in its work, as long as there's also a research assistant to handle a few details in the intervening months. The professor stirs. We examine the pod. Numerous pumps and monitors are hooked up to the professor's pod. A large chunk of the observatory's energy budget is devoted to keeping the professor asleep while also keeping it alive. Let's go back north to the study. And let's go west, young man or woman, to the computer lab. Professor Thej calls this rat's nest of cables and interfaces the computer, as if it were a single, discrete, manageable object. The desk is a mess, too. That's partially your fault. There are ways out to the north, east, and west. Examine computer. The computer governs all the observatory systems, from life support to data collection to attitude control. The professor set up all the interfaces to meet Saddlebari standards of usability, so getting anything done with human limbs is usually inconvenient and sometimes impossible. Let's examine the desk. You knew when you signed up for this assistantship that there would be a lot of downtime while Professor Thej hibernated, so you prepared to embark on several stimulating new hobbies. Here at this desk are your abandoned poems, your abandoned origami, your abandoned watercolors, the first pages of a memoir. Clean desk? The messy desk is fine. Okay. Let's go north this time. To tunnel. Cramped tunnels worm their way through the asteroid, their paths dictated by the integrity of the surrounding basalt. Why would they put an observatory in such a tiny hunk of rock? Because the astronomy department couldn't afford anything better. But why does it have to be me stuck out here? Well, because of all those decisions you made. From this intersection, the passages go north, east, south, and west. Let's just go. Let's see if we can go all the way around. Let's go west from here to the cabin. Your quarters are so small that the professor can't even fit inside, which at least means they afford some privacy. I don't know why I'm pronouncing it privacy here. I was affecting that specifically for Johanna, but here in the story itself, I'm using my own voice. This is the only upside of living in such a tiny little hole. Since Professor Thej went to sleep, you've been sleeping exclusively on the couch, so your bed is covered in a pile of clothes and trash. Above the bed, a lenticular poster is glued to the ceiling. Narrow passages lead east, west, and south. Examine that poster. It's not even that racy, but you can't imagine the professor would approve. Thej has a low opinion of human anatomy in general, clothed or not. Let's examine the bed. One reason the couch is preferable to the bed is tiny, basically a cot. Right now it's functioning more as a shelf for your pile of junk. I examine the junk. Everything you haven't felt like dealing with is here. Dirty clothes mostly, but also a lot of the dishes and stuff that you couldn't be bothered to clean or throw away, or whatever you're supposed to do with them. Search the junk? That's a scary prospect. Look under bed. The bed is flush with the floor. There is no cool hiding place underneath. Well, we continue west to the lounge. So here's lounge, here's tunnel, here's cabin, here's lounge. 3 areas in such close proximity that we can circumnavigate by going west continuously. Let's go south again to the study. And west from here is the computer lab, and west from here is the telescope. The radio telescope's dish is almost as wide as the asteroid is long, and from outside it looks a lot like a soup bowl strapped to a potato. Inside, the bottom of the dish forms a convex ceiling for the chamber below, forcing you to hunch over and contort yourself to get around. Some slightly more comfortable tunnels lead north, east, and west. Here's the study again. South is the hibernation pod. West to the lab. West to the scope. So the hibernation pod is south from the study, which is south of the lounge. Okay, from the tunnel we can go north to the shuttle bay. At the top of the asteroid is its modest garage where Professor Thej's skiff is parked. The way out into space, is through the monolithic pressure gate. The way back into your prison of maze-like tunnels is south. Examine the skiff. The shuttle must be 100 years old. You're pretty sure it almost exploded a couple times while you were flying out here. The trip seemed to take an eternity. You took the wheel while the professor slept in the back, rousing itself occasionally to criticize your driving ability. When you finally arrived, Thej insisted on landing so you wouldn't wreck the skiff's paint job. I examined the gate. This slab of steel in the cave wall has to be about 10 feet thick, so the atmosphere inside the asteroid doesn't bust out and suck all the contents of the observatory into space. We go back south to the tunnel. Here's our cabin. And here's the lounge. So that is basically everything. Let's examine the skylight. A curtain of 1,000,000 stars hangs outside the skylight. Always the same stars, never changing position. The view has become just as breathtaking as any cave wall. Somebody screams, and you almost jump out of your skin. Listen, you wobble a bit while your nervous system collects itself. You hear the scream again and again. It's an alarm ringing somewhere in the observatory. We go west of the tunnel. The cramped tunnels worm their way through the asteroid, their paths dictated by the integrity of the surrounding basalt. From this intersection, the passages go north, east, south, and west. The beeping seems to come from everywhere. South to the computer lab. The ringing might be louder in here. Examine computer. No. West to the telescope, west to the study. Nope, that's... Yeah, it's going to be here. Okay, examine interface. No. Examine the desk. No. Okay, let's... computer governs all the observatory systems, from life support to data collection to attitude control. Let's examine life support. Luckily, the life support system seems to be taking care of itself. Let's look at data collection. The computer processes everything the telescope picks up and assembles the data in a format that the professor can understand. A format completely unlike the one they taught you at the university. Let's examine attitude control. Somewhere in this hunk of rock are a set of wheels that spin around at a jillion RPM. When the attitude stabilizer notices the asteroid wobbling, it directs those wheels to change speed, which causes the asteroid to rotate because of conservation of angular momentum. So, as long as the attitude stabilizer is turned on, the telescope always points in precisely the same direction. Listen. Trying to focus your ears only makes the sound more unbearable. Okay. I feel like this is where the sound is coming from. While I'm thinking about this, as a reminder, you can open Rainy Mood in another tab. That is just www.rainymood.com. It is perhaps not the best fit for our current alarm-ridden atmosphere, but it will be an overall good experience while playing through this game together. Let's see. Use computer. Use interface. That's not a verb I recognize. Look. East. Study south. Examine Thej. The professor is still. You must have imagined it. The ringing is starting to make your head hurt. Caves echo with repetitive ringing. East to the telescope, east to the lab. It's louder in the lab. We go north to the tunnel. East is the lounge. East is the cabin. It's got to be the computer lab. Search desk. The sound gets even louder as you turn your attention to the messy desk. You shove your way through the clutter, searching more by touch than by sight. Your fingers curl around an oblong device, and you feel vibrations going up your arm in time with the beeping. At last, the offending object emerges from the desk. It's an alarm clock, so that's where that went. It takes some effort to make it shut up. Did they design this thing to be as obnoxious as possible? But now it's quiet. I examine the clock. You set this alarm when Professor Thej entered hibernation. On its display is a message, Day 117, execute RADA 29. That means it's finally time to spin the observatory around. You'll have to turn on the computer. Turn on computer. You tap on one of the displays you can reach, and the interface slowly wakes itself up. Professor Thej's specialization, well, yours too, ostensibly, is in the field of Oscivoto emanations, interstellar signals that break down under the slightest interference. This makes them impossible to detect from any observatory in an inhabited system. You scroll through menus until you find the reorientation protocol. It says the first step is to turn off attitude stabilization. Of course, you have to do all of this manually. Turn off attitude stabilization. You stomp across the room to the interface for the attitude stabilizer. First you click Suspend Stabilization, and then Confirm, and then you have to hold down the button for a while to prove you really mean it. To have any chance of detecting Oscivoto emanations, Professor Thej needed an observatory that was as far away from civilization as possible. So, in an asteroid cloud around a nameless, near-dead star. And to properly image these emanations, the telescope needs to take an extremely long exposure of interstellar space. Something stops whirring, and the ground shudders a little bit. With the first imaging session finally complete, it's time to begin scanning the other half of the galaxy. To do that, you'll have to initiate RADA 29. Okay, so we did turn off attitude stabilization. Now we examine the computer. Right, you'll have to initiate RADA 29. Initiate RADA 29. You stomp back across the room to the RCS controls. This is the stupid part. Each thruster has its own throttle, and they all have to be operated in perfect unison. Or else the new orientation will be off target, and you'll have to waste fuel making corrections. An easy enough task for the professor, but you only have 2 hands. You lean over the control panel and try your best to push all the throttles forward the same amount. The room rumbles as the engines come to life, and you sway slightly as the asteroid rotates. Something pops. Everything lurches to one side, and you fall over the controls. The thrusters roar, and you're thrown off the control panel and onto the floor. You try to get to your feet, but the room goes sideways. You fall again, tangled in cables. You screw your eyes shut, covering your ears with your hands to muffle the screaming engines and suppress your nausea. You may have blacked out for a moment. With no frame of reference, only unbearable noise and incomprehensible motion, it's difficult to tell. One by one the thrusters die, their fuel cells emptied. Now the observatory is silent again. You crawl toward the nearest wall and stagger most of the way to your feet. Computer lab. The room is spinning. Turn on attitude stabilization. Yeah, attitude stabilization. You push yourself along the wall toward the attitude controls. You click Enable Stabilization, and then Confirm, and then you muster your last reserves of bodily stability to hold down the button until the stupid thing actually starts. You can hear the reaction wheels spinning and stopping madly as the stabilization system struggles to counteract the asteroid's gyration. Eventually, things slow down enough that you can stand unassisted. Computer lab. Everything seems to be more or less where it should be, but all the interfaces are blinking with different warnings. There are ways out to the north, east, and west. I examine the warnings. Most of the warnings are beyond your expertise, but the words hibernation tank failure are pretty easy to understand. Oh. Oh dear. We go east of the study. The professor's amphisbaena is upended, tossed into a corner. The floor is wet. Passages lead north, east, south, and west. Well, it sounds like this is already a known fact, but we should go see for ourselves and confirm that the professor is loose. Hibernation pod. The tank is empty. None of the monitors are active. A trail of slime wends its way around the tank, up to your feet. We go back north to the study. Passages lead north, east, south, and west. We go north to the lounge. The stars above are still whizzing by wildly. The couch has been torn apart. Slimy chunks of foam litter the floor. The TV and microwave have been smashed and tossed across the room. Passages through the rock lead east, west, and south. Oh, you're alive. The professor's voice reverberates through the tunnels. You know, I've had a lot of worthless research assistants, but I've never been saddled with someone possessed of the deleterious incompetence it takes to destroy $10 million in scientific equipment. Well, almost destroy. I try to go west. You enter the tunnel, and something squelches up ahead. Ah, there you are, it says, and you hear it scuttling down the passageway. In animal terror, you retreat, and the noise stops. Oh, don't be shy, you blithering waste of air. There's only one thing left for you. No point postponing it. You hold still and try to breathe quietly. I didn't like you to begin with. I liked you less and less the longer you worked for me. Even before I felt the change coming, I was wishing there was some way to get rid of you. And while I was sleeping, furious hissing, or sarcastic laughter, or an unnameable sound for an equally inhumane emotion fills the asteroid. I guess let's go back to the east, to the cabin. It should be safe in here. The professor can't fit through the narrow passages. On your bed is a pile of clothes and trash. Your lenticular poster is glued to the ceiling. The tunnels lead east, west, and south. I could hear everything. For months. All your snoring, sniffling, belching, crying, farting, whistling, muttering, whining about your cushy assistantship, whining that you had nothing to do. And when you finally had something to do, when you had just one job, the professor moans and the asteroid shakes. You are carrying an alarm clock. The upside is this. As long as the change is happening, I can't be held responsible for my actions. The university has all the paperwork. Parts of the professor's mouth that aren't busy speaking English start purring greedily. I've never eaten a human research assistant before, and it sounds like you've gotten fatter since I've been asleep. Am I right about that? You can hear the professor's bulk slithering through the tunnels to the east. Turn on alarm clock. A plan is forming in your head, but for it to work, you'll have to take the alarm to a place where Thej can reach it. I'm getting tired of waiting. The professor's heavy breathing, or whatever that noise is, filters in through the east tunnel. We go south to the telescope. The telescope seems to be intact, but you can't see much of it from in here. Turn on alarm. You fumble with the alarm's clock screen and set it for some random number of seconds. Then you toss it into the far corner of the room. You'd better get a move on. North to the cabin. It should be safe in here. The professor can't fit through the narrow passages. On your bed is a pile of clothes and trash. Your lenticular poster is glued to the ceiling. Thej sniffs. Back in your hidey hole. I wish you'd come out of there. Your uncooperativeness is tremendously frustrating. I can't leave now. That alarm will go off any second. A second ticks by. Another second ticks by. Would you stop that? Thej whines. You realize you've been biting your fingernail. Sing. Capella, Auriga, Eta Carinae, Sagitta, Aquila, Alpha Centauri. Another second ticks by. The alarm goes off. It beeps incredibly loudly. Will you please turn off that insufferable machine? Thej groans. You just have to wait a little longer. Turn that off right now, or you will live to regret it, Thej whines. The alarm keeps beeping, seemingly more shrill than before. The noise is unbearable. Is this a trick? Are you trying to trick me? Thej hizzes through the tunnels, struggling to be heard over the pings of the alarm clock. You really are a stupid brat, and desperate, and cruel. This isn't... Thej wails in pain. This isn't going to work. I'm going to outlast you. You'll turn off that alarm, and then I will find you, and then... It howls again. The noise is unbearable. Its rage boiling over, the professor screams even louder than the alarm, and you hear it stampeding through the tunnels. You strain your ears. The alarm goes on ringing, muffled by the limbs of something trying to rip it to pieces. Nope. Not to the lounge. We undo it. We go east to the tunnel. The web of tunnels extends in all directions, but the shuttle bay is just north from here. We go north to the shuttle bay. Professor Thej's skiff is parked here, beneath the gigantic pressure gate. Enter skiff. You jump into the driver's seat. The key is in the ignition. The garage door opener is just above the windshield. Press garage door opener. The button clicks and a shutter falls over the southern tunnel entrance to prepare for depressurization. The pressure gate opens. Outside the skiff, there is a horrendous sucking noise. All the air and dust in the garage flies out into space. The stars revolve above you, ever so slowly. Turn on ignition. Turn key. You turn the key. The engines fire up, and then they sputter out. What's wrong? Oh, the parking brake is engaged. Disengage parking brake. You push the lever down, and the skiff shifts slightly. Then, the whole asteroid shakes. Something has collided with the shutter between the garage and the tunnels. Turn key. You turn the key. The engines fire up. The skiff rises from the floor. The shutter flies off the wall, and the professor bursts into the garage. The observatory's atmosphere spills out from behind it. Your poems, your watercolors, your origami, and all your laundry stream out and up through the open pressure gate. You pull on the yoke to ascend. Professor Thej crawls across the garage, extending a huge, thorny claw. The skiff lurches to one side. A shrill chirp indicates that something's wrong with the landing gear. With one arm, you yank as hard as you can on the yoke, and with the other you reach for the secondary thrusters. If you were just a little taller. You pop the thrusters, and the skiff shoots up and out of the observatory into open space. As you accelerate, the craft rattles like it's about to fall apart. Then the rattling stops. All the instruments show up okay. A shape moves in the rear view. Curiosity gets the better of common sense, and you adjust the mirror for a closer look. The writhing form of Professor Thej grows smaller and smaller, screaming silently at you across the void. The end. The chamber is quiet for a moment, until a log cracks in the fireplace and brings us back to reality. Slowly we realize that we have only been the audience of a story. There is no danger. It was all pretend. Then there is collective applause. Johanna accepts it graciously, and the moderator rises. The library door flies open, and a figure appears. His leather coat goes down to his ankles, streaming rainwater all over the carpet. His wide-brimmed hat covers most of his face, but we all know who it is. I have a story, he announces, brandishing a sheaf of yellowed papers. I request recognition. The moderator steps forward, defending the lectern. Sir, you know you aren't welcome here. I demand to be heard. I contest the ruling of the board of directors. A couple of authors stand up and advance on the man. He sneers. You're removing me by force? What kind of organization is this? Stay away from me, you thugs! One author puts a hand on the man's shoulder, murmuring a quiet suggestion, but the man recoils and his hat falls to the floor. You are surprised by his face. You had not expected to see such delicate, boyish features, or eyes filled more with sadness than with anger. This assembly is a farce, he hisses, as he picks up his hat. He shakes it off, splashing us all with drops of oily rain. Then he stuffs his story back into his coat and spins around, disappearing into the halls of Castle Balderstone. All the authors start muttering to each other about that guy and how much gall he has, and the moderator makes a valiant effort at settling everything down. It looks like there won't be time for Johanna to take any questions about her story. Well, how much did you enjoy it on a scale of 1 to 10? Personally, I give it a 10. Yeah? Okay, awesome. Now it is time for the next author to step forward and share the next of the evening's distressing entertainments. It is Victor Atencio, and he looks great. While he's approaching the podium, I try to explain quietly. Victor Atencio is an absolute genius of gruesomeness. They call him the Van Gogh of gore, but he suffered from debilitating weight problems to the point that he had to stop writing while he pursued various treatments and underwent various surgeries. I also heard... Why is someone shushing me? Oh, he's starting. It's been a while since I visited Castle Balderstone, Victor says, and the people start applauding him, but he waves it away. I'm excited to get back in the game, and I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little rusty. Everybody chuckles. I try to whisper to you the juicy rumor that I heard, but Victor goes on. What I've brought tonight is a new piece in a classic format. I don't aim to surprise, only to terrify. We all chuckle again, now a little nervously, and Victor begins to read. Ryan Veeder presents Mittens, a story by Victor Atencio, the Van Gogh of gore. Release 1, serial number 191031, Inform 7, Build 6M62, I6/V6.33, Lib 6/12N, SD. Nursery. Wayne and Yvette are a little bit late, but that just means more quality time for you and little Rowan. The walls are painted with mountains and pines. The wide window fills the room with sunlight. Rowan is asleep in his crib, his brow furrowed by the itty-bitty concerns that trouble babies. Your oxygen concentrator hums away. It's not bothering the baby at all. He probably finds it very soothing. Oh, that's troubling. Let's examine the oxygen concentrator. Wherever you go, your oxygen follows, and every minute of the day, you have a tube stuck in your nose. You tell the kids you've gotten used to it. I guess we should examine me. You're through accomplishing things of your own. You kept yourself busy for long enough. These years are for resting and enjoying the accomplishments of others, of your children and your grandchildren and your beautiful great-grandson. We should examine him. He's beautiful. He looks more like his mother than his father, but you won't tell Wayne that. I examine the walls. Wayne painted the forest scene. He hopes Rowan will grow up into an avid outdoorsman. Wayne and Yvette's cat strolls into the room. An ominous event. We examine cat. Yvette loves this cat, and the cat loves her. And it hates everything else. Can we open the window? It isn't something you can open. Let's examine the window. Outside the nursery is a lovely April day. It's no wonder Wayne and Yvette are taking so long. We listen, you hear nothing unexpected. The cat darts between your legs, hisses furiously, and digs its fangs into your calf. Then it disappears. Oh, well, that's unpleasant. Rub calf. There's not much you can do about that right now. There's a dark shape in the crib. The cat is sitting on Rowan. Take the cat. As you lean over the crib, the cat leaps away. You place a hand on Rowan's forehead. He seems to be fine. Then a horrible hissing noise fills the nursery, and Rowan starts squirming. You turn and see the cat toying with your oxygen concentrator. The tube connected to your nose has been knocked loose. Reconnect tube. Connect tube. Take tube. The cat is between you and your machine. The cat arches its back, puffs out its fur, and seems to grow several inches. It hisses at you, almost screaming. Take cat. The cat grows larger. It's really growing. It's 3 feet tall now. It screeches at you, batting at your face with fist-sized paws. Try to go out, but you aren't in anything at the moment. The cat continues to grow, its screeches getting louder, its claws and teeth becoming longer. You stagger to the floor. Your chest feels tight. Wake up. If only it were that easy. The cat towers over you, growing larger and larger. You can't get up. You can't breathe. Try to sleep. You aren't feeling especially drowsy. The cat is huge. It fills the room. Your vision swims. Your heart is going so fast. Your throat is so tight. You die of fright. The cat steps over your body, over the crib, toward the window. It bats at the window and shatters it effortlessly. The cat squeezes out of the window, destroying the surrounding nursery wall. The cat steps outside. As it walks across the lawn, it goes on growing until it's as tall as the house. The cat walks into the street, trampling Wayne's car. A child screams. Rowan stirs, but does not wake. You are dead. The cat continues along the street, heading downtown. The end. Well, that was spooky. Victor executes a stiff bow. The chamber erupts in applause. Thank you, he says, and the room quiets a little. I lean over to whisper, but the moderator is getting up now. Chilling as ever, Mr. Atencio. Are there any questions? Naturally, the author sitting right next to us has to raise her hand. Is Mittens the name of the cat? She asks. Of course it's the name of the cat, you ridiculous woman. Ah, I guess it must be, Victor answers. Everyone laughs. Ha ha ha. Anyway, what I was going to say was, how did you find your way into the character of the protagonist, a great-grandparent? Asks an incredibly loud author sitting behind us. Well, that's kind of personal, says Victor, and everything gets quiet. The silence is so complete that I can't whisper anything to you. How about another round of applause for Victor Atencio, asks the moderator, and everybody claps, and Victor bows again. And now I can finally tell you, there was a rumor that Victor got his nose done while he was having all those other surgeries, and now that I see him in person, he definitely did get his nose done. So how much, on a scale of 1 to 10, did you like that story? The one Victor told, not the one about his medical history. Can we give that one an 11? No. The highest score you can give is 10. Well, in that case, I'm going to give it a 9. Yeah? Okay, awesome. Now it is time for the next author to step forward and share the next of the evening's hideous entertainments. It is, oh my gosh, it's Allison Chase. She is rapturous. She is heavenly. I mean, obviously I appreciate her as an author, first and foremost. Allison Chase is unmatched in her literary command of suspense, anxiety, and trepidation. From page 1 to page 647, she has the reader's amygdala wrapped around her little finger. But look at that little finger. Look at her hands, her willowy arms. Look at that neck. Oh, that neck. Allison Chase's neck. Around that impossible neck is a pendant. Does she always wear that pendant? Maybe she wears different pendants. Maybe I should give her a pendant, and then when she wore it, my pendant would be around Allison Chase's neck. I happened upon this story while browsing through some old cabinets, she says. Her voice is like a church bell echoing across a field of fog. I close my eyes, the better to drink in that voice. I found it utterly horrific. I wondered, what sort of sadistic monster could possibly have composed something so deliriously awful? I open my eyes so that I can look at her neck. But when I turn back to the first page, the name I saw beneath the title, I lean further forward. I have stopped breathing. I have completely forgotten that you, my guest, exist. Was my own. As far as I'm concerned, there is no one else in the room. I am aware only of the lips of Allison Chase as she smiles wickedly and begins to read. Ryan Veeder presents The Ghastly Visage, A Tale of Terror by Allison Chase. Release 1, serial number 191031, Inform 7, build 6M62, I6, version 6.33, library 6/12 in SD. The creature was monstrous to behold. Examine creature. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair was stringy and unctuous. His teeth were chipped and yellowed. His chin protruded like a bent nail. Examine eyes. Caked around his bloodshot eyes was a vile crust, of which minute crumbs had scattered over his clammy cheeks. Examine cheeks. His cheeks, marred by crumbs and pitted with acne, were concave and elongated, a gray, narrow casket in which were set his gaping lips. Examine lips. His chapped lips hung open mutely, revealing discolored teeth and a lolling tongue. Examine the tongue. His tongue hung from between his lips like a fat worm emerging from its slimy burrow. Let's examine his teeth. Each of his teeth was a unique sculpture, chiseled by decades of decay. Each depicted its own tale of neglect, except for those mercifully veiled by his awful tongue. Examine his chin. His bony, pointed chin seemed to dangle like a pendulum beneath his shriveled lips, or else to erupt like an escaped prisoner from his overstretched neck. Examine the neck. Every muscle in his neck stuck out like a pencil beneath his wretched skin, drawing his shoulders forward involuntarily, stretching out his back and chest like leather on a tanner's rack. Shoulders? His shoulders extended from his spine like the lopsided beams of a wrecked ship. His arms hung below, swaying with each ragged sucking breath. Examine arms. His arms, hanging tenuously from his shoulders, bore only crude, string-like muscles, hardly powerful enough to manipulate his bony elbows and wrists. Let's examine wrists. His wrists, too large for his emaciated forearms, were yet too small for his awful, arachnidous hands. Forearms? Okay. Yep, basically the same. Let's examine hands. Long fur covered his hands. It grew like a fungus over his knuckles, down his impossibly long fingers, down to his fingernails. Examine the fingers. Each finger was like the leg of a fur-encrusted spider, and at each despicable finger's terminus was an unspeakable fingernail. Some were chipped, some were sharpened to points, all were asymmetrical, all were yellow, all his fingernails were dirty. Examine his chest. His ribs were set carelessly in his chest, and seemed in danger of knocking each other loose, or of collapsing collectively into his cavernous belly. Let's examine that belly. Between his ribcage and his pelvis was his sallow stomach, swelling and stretching whenever he managed to draw breath, shrinking and shriveling with each exhalation. We examined the pelvis. His hips were set at a crazy angle, upsetting the trajectories of his spine and everything that radiated therefrom. The posture of his legs, though by no means recognizable as human, had in it nothing of animal grace. Examine legs. His grimy legs, interrupted by rickety knees, struggled to remain erect over his malformed ankles. Examine the knees. While his knees, like knots, obscene, ineffective, oblique, separated messily the halves of his legs, and really two different worlds, two different sexes, are not so different as were the two halves of his horrible, horrible legs. Examine ankles. Those objects which conjoined his feet to his legs were as shapely, as sturdy, and as wet as lumps of clay dredged from the bottom of a tainted creek. Examine feet. His feet were slick with moisture, and beneath his skin I saw grayish veins snaking toward his toes. Examine the toes. Cracked toenails protruded from long, bony toes, and as he teetered under his own diseased bulk, his toes produced minute ripples in the puddle of fluid that surrounded him. Examine toenails. His toenails had the gritty texture and the striated appearance of sandstone. His hair. Matted ropes of hair hung a tangled rat's nest over his ears and down his back. His spine was stooped, and each ill-shaped vertebra was visible beneath his skin, as were the crooked protuberances of his iliac crest. which are the parts of the pelvis. Let's examine spine. Yeah, okay, we saw that already. Let's examine his ribs. Nope. Okay, let's examine teeth. We already saw the teeth. I can do nothing but stare, examine me. Not bad, given the competition. I couldn't see any such thing. Look, the creature was monstrous to behold. Can't talk to... I can't see a creature to talk to, curiously. Let's examine... What is a noun we have overlooked? Ankles, feet... Veins sneaking towards toes, toenails, pelvis, rib cage, chest, fingernail, hands, forearms, wrists, arms, shoulders, neck, chin, teeth, tongue, lips, eyes. Close eyes. I could do nothing but stare. Stare. Creature. Cheeks. Just revisiting all of these nouns. Neck. Chest. Belly. Pelvis. Legs. Knees. Yeah, okay. Ankles. Feet. Toes. Toenails. Skin. I will not torture myself by describing his skin. Only do that to something animate. I could do nothing but stare. It is not a twist that we're looking in a mirror, so we can't stare at reflection. Allison is, despite being the object of fascination for our host, writes kind of the most like conceptual stories. They don't really. They are very punctuated, I will say. What am I missing? Hair. Ears? His ears, mostly obscured by a mass of greasy hair, seemed to wriggle with their own awful intelligence, entirely independent of the creatures. Gums. Brow. Shoulders. Biceps. Oh, the liquid. The fluid that pooled around the creature's feet was composed of the same liquid that had formed rivulets running down the entirety of his repulsive body, currents which began in the corners of his sickly, overstrained eyes, for the creature was standing in a puddle of his own tears. The end. Right. Yeah, okay. That's how that one ends. It's been a while since I played this, and I had forgotten. The end. Those two words are a pair of golden scissors slicing effortlessly through infinite tension. I more or less faint into my chair. The moderator rises and asks if there are any questions. I leap to my feet. The moderator calls on me warily. Thank you for another excellent reading, Miss Chase, I begin. She nods and mutters modestly. I go on. I have a question about the story you presented last year, titled Lights Out. In that story you said, and I now quote from memory, it is pitch dark and love is just a chemical reaction. Do you personally believe that love is just a chemical reaction? I'm impressed that you remember that far back, Allison says, and now I get to nod and mutter modestly. She goes on. Of course, all of us here are authors, and we know that not every word we put to paper is one that we earnestly believe. I have sworn no oath to truth, but to art, and in service to art I readily will wield a true sentence in one hand and a falsehood in the other. Besides, as we all know, sometimes lies can tell us the truth of things too terrible to be broached by the prim and proper facts. There are murmurs of patient assent. All of this is obvious to us authors. In writing Lights Out, as is so often the case, it was my mission to terrify my reader. And so I wrote that love is only a chemical reaction, not to teach the reader an uncomfortable truth, but because that sentence, the meaninglessness that wears that sentence as its hideous mask, is the scariest thing I can think of. I have goosebumps. Thank you, Miss Chase, I say, and she thanks for me, and the moderator thanks me, and I sit down. My knees are shaking. So, anyway, how much did you like the story, on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's give that one a 7. Okay, noted. Now it is time for the next author to step forward and share the next of the evening's insidious entertainments. It is Eddie Carlisle. I gasp and grab your wrist. You tug at your hand until I let go. I am too anxious to apologize. None of these authors scare me like Eddie Carlisle does. No avenue of horror is off limits to Carlisle. He sniffs at taboo. He rolls his eyes at the critics every time they say he's gone too far. I've only read the Wikipedia synopses of his works, and they still give me nightmares. Ed looks down at the lectern and coughs. I heard that at this year's meeting, we could share stories that weren't, Halloween spooky. Wait, what? And, well, the invitation said that one of the themes we could pick instead was Dia de Muertos, or Mexican folklore and mythology in general. So I chose to write something along those lines, and it's based on one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs. The other authors are glancing around the room. You and I are glancing at each other. Ed swallows loudly, still looking down at the lectern. So, I guess, for a Castle Balderstone story, this is kind of experimental, but I hope you'll enjoy it. Well, it's an Eddie Carlisle story. It's probably at least a little scary. He coughs again, and then he begins to read. Ryan Veeder presents Romance in Durango, adapted by Eddie Carlisle, from a song by Bob Dylan. Release 1, serial number 191031, Inform 7, build 6M62. i6, version 6.33, lib 612 in SD. Desert. The horse paces slowly across the sands, worn out from a long day of riding. You clutch Roberto's cape and screw your eyes shut. You are weary for sleep, but sleep is impossible under this bright sun, atop this staggering horse. We examine Roberto. Roberto is a handsome man with gentle eyes and a curly beard, but sitting behind him, all you can see are his hat and his cape. You don't remember him wearing that cape before. We examine the cape. The cape Roberto wears is covered in dust, but why isn't his guitar strapped to his back? Ask Roberto about guitar. You ask Roberto what happened to his guitar. Ah, I sold that guitar to Pablo, the son of the panadero, for this. With a triumphant flourish, he produces from his cape a fist-sized loaf of bread. I was saving it for la noche, but you have had such a long viaje. Here you go, mi amor. He presses the bread into your hands. Apologies for the bad Spanish pronunciation. I do not speak it, and just pick it up by haphazard exposure. Examine the bread. How much was Roberto's guitar worth? How much food will the two of you need to reach Durango before you starve to death? You can't focus on these questions. You're starving. Eat bread. You gobble it down. You feel a little less exhausted, but even sleepier. Examine me. Your eyes are red from sleeplessness and strained from so much squinting. Your face and your dress are coated in dust. You feel lucky that Roberto cannot see you. You aren't feeling especially drowsy, and now the sun, which had seemed to hang just overhead for so long, finally seems to be descending. Examine the hat. Roberto's hat is covered in dust. You wonder what color it is underneath. We look. The horse continues forward over gray sand and gray brush. The sun is now approaching the horizon. We cannot see the horizon, though. Wait. The horse clops along, hoofbeats like lazy castanets. We ask Roberto about Durango. Roberto sighs blissfully. When we reach Durango, we'll go to the corrida and sit in the shade drinking tequila, and we'll watch the young tolero at his violent work. And the very next day, we will find the padre at his little church, and will finally be married. You hold Roberto tightly around his waist, and he pets your delicate hand. We ask about the horse. Roberto clicks his tongue nervously. A friend lent this fine caballo to me. I don't know when I will be able to repay him after we reach Durango, but he already owed me un favor, so... I tried to ask about the friend. Roberto cocks his head. What was that, my little one? I'm not sure I heard you correctamente. Usually this means Roberto doesn't want to talk about something. You lurch to a halt. Magdalena, whispers Roberto, pointing across the brush. A few crumbling walls sit in the shadow of a hillside. We can make campamento there. He urges the horse toward the ruins. Ruins. The sun is very low, casting long purple shadows over the dust. There was a city here centuries ago. Roberto ties the horse to a withered tree, eyeing the hills above warily. One nearby building seems more or less intact. We examine the building. Nothing about the building gives any clue as to what it might be. I examine the tree. The tree would snap easily if the horse decided to run off. Try to enter the building. It is a temple. The sagging walls lean over an altar. There is no roof, and the stone glows indigo under the stars. In the back wall is a narrow archway. On the other side of the archway is another room. We enter the archway. It is pitch dark, and you can't see a thing. We go back out to the temple. And back out to the ruins. Roberto rubs his beard, staring up past you. Roberto seems distracted, but he has much to worry over. As you're wondering how to bring up the subject, Roberto speaks. Querida, you must find a place where we will be escondidos. Take this linterna, and I will keep watch. He hands you a dented lantern and resumes scanning the horizon. Go back in. Light lantern. It takes a few tries, but you manage to light the lantern. Inner chamber. Maybe this was the apartment of the temple priest. In the center of the room is a stone stairway descending into darkness. Your lantern's light catches on something in the corner, a black shard. Examine the shard. The flat side seems polished like a mirror, but the material is completely black. Even in the darkness, you can see that the fractured edge is deadly sharp. We take it. You lean down and reach for the shard as carefully as you can, but it slices your fingertip just the same. A drop of blood splashes on the mottled floor. Go down. Stairway. The stairs go on longer than you had expected. You go down further, to the tunnel. You thrust your lantern forward uncertainly, half expecting to see walls piled high with skulls, but the tunnel is empty except for some loose gravel and some footprints in the dust. At the far end of the tunnel is a low archway, blocked by fallen rocks. Examine the footprints. You contemplate the floor and the places where the dust has been disturbed, but you cannot guess what may have happened here, or for how long this place has been abandoned. We examine the rocks. Several small boulders are piled in front of the low archway, as if the tunnel had collapsed partially some years ago. Move rocks? You push the rocks out of the way easily. They're only painted styrofoam. In a few seconds, the archway is clear. Go through archway. Soundstage. Bright lights surround you on all sides. A giant camera is pointed at your face. Behind you is a low archway of painted canvas. Now, I need you to think about Roberto and whether you can trust him. And you're thinking about Ramon and which one you really loved. Are you in the right place? We'll be cutting between this and Roberto's scene outside where he stares into the sunset and thinks about kind of the same questions. You're both wondering if you're going to stick together. Okay. Think. What a good idea. Maybe put your hand up to your neck. Yeah, you're in distress, and you could almost run away, but then you steel yourself. Perfect. Look. Bright lights surround you on all sides. A giant camera is pointed at your face. Now you've made your decision, and you turn around and you find your way back to Roberto. Go through archway. The tunnel. The dusty tunnel is mostly empty. A cool breeze issues from the stairway. We go up. A tenuous sliver of moonlight falls over the stairs. We go up to the inner chamber. Inner chamber. The temple is quiet. A narrow archway leads out to the main chamber. Temple. The sun is gone. The moon and stars shiver overhead. Roberto will be outside, waiting for you. Out to the ruins. You emerge from the ruins, and Roberto rises to greet you. You walk over to Roberto. There is a flash of light on the hill, and a crack like thunder splits the air. Roberto crumples to the sand, a bullet in his chest. You run to him, kneel over him, cradle his head in your hands. His gaze is focused on the hill above. Ramon, he gasps. He draws his pistol, but it falls from his fingers. Magdalena, mi prado de brisas frescas. His eyes close. Aim well, mi linda. Take pistol. You pick up Roberto's pistol. Something catches your eye, something disappearing over the hill. We go up. You crawl up the hill. Your dress snags on a cactus. Your lantern goes out. You toss it behind you. Hills. When you reach the hilltop, you hold very still to search the valley below. A jaguar is running away, leaping like quicksilver over the rocks. You aim at the jaguar and fire. You hear the bullet careen off a rock. The jaguar seems not to notice. Again. No need to waste another bullet. Examine the jaguar. You could just make out the shape of the jaguar on the rocks. It stopped near the bottom of the valley. It thinks it's safe. No need to waste another bullet. Down. Climbing down the rocks takes a long time. The jaguar sits calmly, waiting for you. Valley. The jaguar is a man, standing over the stream that cuts through the valley. He carries a rifle. He coughs violently, and blood spatters on the sand. He takes a second to recover. Well? He asks. He licks his bloody lips. He has nothing to say, and the desert is silent. He wears the bloody face of Ramon, but behind his mask are eyes of glittering obsidian. This is Tezcatlipoca, god of murder, embodiment of strife. You raise your gun. He smirks and glances behind you at the hilltop. You spin and see Magdalena raise her rifle. You try to scream, she fires, and you are Magdalena again. Roberto crumples to the sand, and the jaguar disappears into the desert night. The end. Eddie gives a little bow, and the library is filled with a reasonable amount of applause. It did get kind of scary at the end there, says one author. Well, says Eddie, hopefully it wasn't too scary. No, not at all, I say, eliciting general murmurs of agreement and reassurance. And another author calls from the back. Exactly the right amount. Eddie gives us an unconvincing smile, and as he cedes the podium, I lean over to you and ask, inobtrusively, how much did you like that story, on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's give that one a 9. Yeah? Okay, awesome. Awkward muttering fills the chamber. Everyone is wondering who the next author will be. The moderator rises and speaks. With that, our evening is concluded. Well, that answers that question. On behalf of the Balderstone estate, I would like to wish you all a wonderful year to come and a safe trip home. Hold on, I say, and I jog up to the dais. The moderator is smart enough to get out of my way. I lean over the lectern and grin. Some of you may know that I've brought a guest here tonight. I wave toward you and everyone looks at you. And for each of the stories, I've been asking my guests to score the story based on how good it is or how much you enjoyed it. Which was it again? You are unable to answer. Anyway, I thought everybody might like to know the results. Each story got a score from 1 to 10, and it looks like, I quickly do some math in my head, it looks like my guests' overall enjoyment of the evening came to 35 out of 40. The authors start to smile at each other, clapping their fellow authors on the shoulder or exchanging hearty handshakes. Hey, that's pretty good, they say. I guess we know what we're doing. And then Allison Chase stands up. Is she leaving? No, she's walking over to talk to you. Over her shoulder, you can see my eyes flashing with demonic jealousy. Wait a minute. If you keep talking to her long enough, then I can get over there, and then I can strike up a conversation with Allison Chase. I can compliment her pendant. This is perfect. Okay, just keep talking. Whatever it takes, do not lose Allison Chase's interest. I step down from the dais. Then there's a crash of thunder. The fireplace is snuffed out, and Castle Balderstone is plunged into darkness. And this is the end of Additional Tales from Castle Balderstone. Thank you for joining me. When next we stream, it will be the third game in the sequence, which is to say, several other tales from Castle Balderstone. I have been Jay Essen. Thank you for watching.